I never thought my husband would leave me at a bus stop like I was garbage he wanted to throw away. But that's exactly what Derek did on a Tuesday afternoon that started like any other day and ended with me meeting someone who would change my entire life. That morning, I woke up to Derek slamming drawers in our bedroom. I could feel the anger radiating off him before he even said a word. I'd been married to him for 5 years, and I'd learned to recognize the signs. The tight jaw, the heavy footsteps, the way he wouldn't look at me directly. "Olivia, we need to talk," he said, his voice cold and sharp. I sat up in bed, my heart already starting to race. "What's wrong?" He threw a piece of paper at me. It fluttered onto the blanket. I picked it up and saw it was our credit card statement. "Care to explain this?" Derek asked, crossing his arms. I looked at the charges. Groceries from 3 days ago. A birthday gift for my mother who was recovering from surgery. Gas for my car. Nothing unusual. Nothing extravagant. "I don't understand," I said softly. "These are normal expenses. We talked about getting something nice for my mom since she's been so sick." "Normal?" Derek's voice rose. "You spent $80 on a gift when we're trying to save money. And look at this grocery bill. $140? What did you buy? Gold-plated vegetables?" I felt my cheeks flush. "Derek, that's groceries for 2 weeks. I used coupons. I bought the store brands like I always do. And the gift for my mom was a cozy blanket and some books. She's been in bed for weeks." "Always an excuse with you," he said, shaking his head. "You know what your problem is, Olivia? You don't understand the value of money. You've never had to struggle. You just spend and spend without thinking about consequences." That wasn't fair, and he knew it. I worked part-time at the library, and every penny of my paycheck went into our joint account. I clipped coupons. I shopped sales. I wore the same clothes for years. But Derek had been saying things like this more and more lately, and I'd learned that arguing only made things worse. "I'm sorry," I whispered, because that's what he wanted to hear. "I'll be more careful." "Sorry isn't enough anymore," Derek said. He grabbed his car keys from the dresser. "Get dressed, we're going out." "Where are we going?" "Your mother's house. Since you're so concerned about her, we'll go visit. But first, you're going to learn a lesson about responsibility." I should have known something was wrong. Derek never volunteered to visit my mother. He usually complained about the drive and found excuses to stay home. But I was so relieved that he seemed to be calming down that I didn't question it. I just got dressed in jeans and a sweater, grabbed my purse and followed him to the car. The drive started normally. Derek turned on the radio and didn't say much. We lived on the west side of the city, and my mother's house was on the east side. But after about 20 minutes, I realized we were heading south instead, toward a part of town I didn't recognize. "Derek, where are we going?" "This isn't the way to my mum's house." "I know," he said simply. "Then where?" "You'll see." My stomach started to feel tight and uncomfortable. Something was wrong. The buildings around us were getting more run down. The streets were emptier. We passed abandoned warehouses and empty lots full of weeds. Finally, Derek pulled over at a bus stop on a deserted street corner. There was nothing around except old buildings with boarded-up windows and a liquor store with bars on the windows across the street. "Get out," Derek said. "What? Why?" "Get out of the car, Olivia." "Derek, please, what's going on? You're scaring me." He reached across me and opened my door. "You need to learn how to manage without constantly depending on me and my money. Since you can't seem to understand the value of $1, you're going to figure out how to get home by yourself. Maybe then you'll appreciate what you have." "What?" "No, Derek, please." "I don't even know where we are." He grabbed my purse from my lap and started rifling through it. He took out my wallet, which had my credit cards, my debit card, and the $32 in cash I'd been saving. He even took my phone from my jacket pocket. "Derek, no! How am I supposed to get home? How am I supposed to call anyone?" "That's your problem to solve," he said. "Consider this a lesson in resourcefulness. When you figure out how to get home and you're ready to apologize properly and commit to being more responsible with money, then we'll talk." "Please don't do this," I begged. Tears were starting to stream down my face. "I'm sorry, I'll do better, I promise. You should have thought about that before you wasted our money. Now get out!" I couldn't believe this was happening. This was my husband, the man who promised to love and protect me. And he was leaving me in a strange part of the city with no money, no phone, and no way to get home. "Derek, get out, or I'll drive away with the door open." My hands were shaking as I climbed out of the car. The moment my feet hit the pavement, Derek slammed the door shut and drove away. I stood there watching his car disappear around the corner, unable to move, unable to think. I was alone. I walked over to the bus stop bench and sat down. My legs felt like they might give out. I looked around, hoping to see someone who might help, but the street was empty. A bus drove past, but I couldn't get on it. I had no money for fare. Hours passed. The sun moved across the sky. I watched buses come and go. Some stopped and the drivers looked at me questioningly, but when I shook my head, they drove on. I thought about walking, but I didn't know which direction to go. I didn't recognize anything around me, and I was afraid of getting even more lost. My throat was dry. My head ached. I couldn't stop crying, even though I tried to hold the tears back. How had my life come to this? How had I ended up sitting at a bus stop in a dangerous neighborhood, abandoned by the person who was supposed to love me most? The afternoon shadows grew longer. The air got cooler. I wrapped my arms around myself and wondered what I was going to do. Would I have to spend the night here? What if something bad happened? What if Derek never came back? That's when I heard the tap of a cane on the sidewalk. I looked up and saw an elderly woman walking slowly toward the bus stop. She wore dark sunglasses and carried a white cane that she swept back and forth in front of her. She was blind. She reached the bench and carefully sat down beside me, leaving a polite distance between us. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she turned her head slightly in my direction. "You've been crying for quite some time, dear," she said gently. "Would you like to tell me what's wrong?" I wiped my eyes quickly, embarrassed that this stranger had heard me crying. I didn't want to burden her with my problems, especially since she was blind and probably had her own difficulties to deal with. "I'm okay," I said, but my voice cracked on the words. The woman smiled softly. "My eyes don't work, dear, but my ears work perfectly well. And I can hear in your voice that you're very far from okay." Something about her kind tone broke through the wall I'd been trying to build around my emotions. Maybe it was because she was a stranger and I'd never see her again. Maybe it was because I'd been holding everything inside for so long, or maybe it was simply because she was the first person in hours who had spoken to me with genuine kindness. "My husband left me here," I said quietly. "He took my money and my phone and just drove away." The woman's expression changed, her mouth pressed into a thin line. "Left you here? At this bus stop? Deliberately?" "Yes," the word came out as barely a whisper. Why on earth would he do such a thing? So I told her. I told her about the credit card statement, about Derek's anger over normal grocery expenses, and my mother's birthday gift, about how he said I needed to learn a lesson about responsibility. Once I started talking, I couldn't stop. I told her about how Derek had been treating me for months, maybe years, how he made me feel small and stupid, how he controlled our money even though I contributed to it, how he blamed me for everything that went wrong in his life. The woman listened without interrupting. She nodded occasionally, and I could see her jaw tightening with each detail I shared. "How long have you been married to this man?" she asked when I finally fell silent. 5 years. "And has he always treated you this way?" I thought about it. No. He was different when we first met. Charming, attentive. But it changed gradually after we got married. At first, I thought I was being too sensitive. He'd apologize after saying something hurtful and tell me he was just stressed about work. But lately the apologies stopped coming. And today he abandoned you in one of the most dangerous parts of the city with no way to protect yourself or get home. Hearing her say it out loud made it sound even worse. Yes, The woman was quiet for a moment, then she turned toward me more fully. "What's your name, dear?" "Olivia. Olivia Henderson." "It's nice to meet you, Olivia. My name is Catherine Wilmington." The name meant nothing to me at first. I was too upset and exhausted to think clearly. "Tell me, Olivia, do you have family nearby? Friends you can call once you get access to a phone?" "My mother lives across town, but she's recovering from surgery. I don't want to worry her." "And my friends?" I trailed off. Derek had gradually pushed most of my friends away over the years, claiming they were bad influences or that they took up too much of my time. "I don't really have many close friends anymore." Catherine nodded slowly, as if this confirmed something she'd suspected. "And what will you do when you get home? Assuming your husband eventually comes back for you or you find another way home?" I hadn't thought that far ahead. "I don't know. Apologize, I guess. Try to make him happy. Figure out how to be better so this doesn't happen again." "Be better?" Catherine's voice had an edge to it now. "Olivia, listen to me carefully. You did nothing wrong. Buying groceries and a gift for your sick mother doesn't make you irresponsible. It makes you a normal person with normal expenses. What your husband did today is called abuse." The word hit me like a slap. "No, he's not. He doesn't hit me or anything like that." "Abuse isn't only physical, dear. Taking away your resources, isolating you from friends, making you doubt your own judgment, punishing you for normal behavior, these are all forms of control and manipulation. And abandoning you in a dangerous place to teach you a lesson is absolutely abuse." I felt tears starting again. Part of me wanted to defend Derek, to make excuses for him the way I always did. But another part of me, a part I'd been ignoring for too long, knew Catherine was right. "I don't know what to do," I admitted. Catherine reached over and patted my hand. Her fingers were warm and steady. "Well, first things first. We're going to get you somewhere safe. My driver should be here any minute. I was supposed to meet an old friend at a cafe down the street, but she had to cancel. I decided to wait here for Thomas rather than call him early." "Your driver?" "Yes. I may not be able to see, but I can still afford excellent help." A sleek black car turned the corner and glided to a stop in front of the bus stop. It was the kind of car I'd only seen in movies, long and elegant with windows so clean they reflected the sky. A man in a neat suit stepped out. He was older, maybe in his 50s, with grey hair and sharp eyes that immediately assessed the situation. "Mrs. Wilmington," he said, opening the back door. "I apologize for the confusion about your appointment." "No apology necessary, Thomas. These things happen." Catherine stood up with the help of her cane. Then she turned back to me. "Olivia, I have a proposition for you. I don't think you should go home to your husband tonight. In fact, I don't think you should go home to him at all until you've had time to think clearly and make decisions from a position of strength rather than fear." "But I don't have anywhere else to go." "Yes, you do. You can come home with me." I stared at her. "What? No, I couldn't possibly." "Why not?" Because I don't even know you. Because it's too much to ask. Because..." "Olivia." Catherine's voice was firm but kind. "I'm 78 years old. I live in a house far too large for one person. I have more money than I could spend in 3 lifetimes. And I'm a rather excellent judge of character, even without my sight. You're a good person in a bad situation, and I'd like to help you. Will you let me?" I couldn't speak. This woman, this stranger, was offering me more kindness in 5 minutes than my own husband had shown me in months. "There's something else," Catherine said, and I heard a hint of mischief in her voice. "When we get in that car, I want you to do something for me. I want you to act like you're my granddaughter. Can you do that?" "Your granddaughter? But why?" "Because, dear Olivia, your husband thought he was teaching you a lesson by leaving you stranded with no resources. What he doesn't know is that he left you stranded with the richest woman in this city. And I think it's time someone taught him a lesson instead." Thomas cleared his throat. Mrs. Wilmington, are you plotting something? Catherine smiled. Thomas, meet my granddaughter Alexandra. She'll be staying with us for a while. Thomas looked at me, then at Catherine, then back at me. I saw understanding dawn in his eyes, followed by something that looked almost like approval. Of course, Mrs. Wilmington. Welcome home, Miss Alexandra. Catherine held out her hand to me. What do you say, dear? Ready to show your husband what a terrible mistake he made? I looked at her outstretched hand. I looked at the expensive car. I looked at Thomas, who was waiting patiently. Then I thought about Derek driving away and leaving me here. About the years of put-downs and control, about how small he'd made me feel. I took Catherine's hand and stood up. Yes, I said, I'm ready. The drive to Catherine's house felt like entering a different world. We passed through neighbourhoods that grew progressively more beautiful, with tree-lined streets and elegant homes set back from the road. Finally, Thomas turned through a set of enormous iron gates that opened automatically. My breath caught in my throat. The driveway curved through manicured gardens with fountains and flower beds that probably cost more than my entire yearly salary. At the end of the drive sat a mansion that looked like something from a magazine. It was 3 stories tall with white columns and huge windows that gleamed in the fading sunlight. Catherine, I whispered. Who are you? She chuckled. I told you, dear. Catherine Wilmington. I owned Wilmington Industries before I retired. Manufacturing mostly. We made parts for cars, airplanes, medical equipment. Boring stuff, really, but quite profitable. Wilmington Industries. Even I had heard of them. They were one of the biggest employers in the state. Thomas helped us out of the car and guided Catherine up the front steps. I followed, feeling completely out of place in my old jeans and tear-stained sweater. Inside, the house was even more breathtaking. The entrance hall had marble floors, a grand staircase, and a crystal chandelier that looked like it belonged in a palace. A woman in her 60s appeared from a side door, wiping her hands on an apron. Mrs. Wilmington, you're home early. I wasn't expecting you until... She stopped when she saw me. Margaret, this is my granddaughter, Alexandra. She'll be staying with us for a while. Could you please prepare the blue guest room? Margaret's eyes widened slightly, but she recovered quickly. Of course, Ma'am. Welcome, Miss Alexandra. Thank you, I managed to say. Catherine squeezed my arm. Margaret has been my housekeeper for 20 years. She's trustworthy and discreet. Now let's get you settled and fed. You must be starving. She was right. I hadn't eaten since breakfast, and my stomach was starting to ache. Margaret led me upstairs to a bedroom that was bigger than my entire apartment. It had a 4-poster bed, a sitting area with a couch and chairs, and French doors that opened onto a balcony overlooking the gardens. There are clothes in the closet that should fit you, Margaret said. Mrs. Wilmington keeps sizes for all her guests. Bathroom is through that door. Take your time freshening up and come down to the dining room when you're ready. After she left, I stood in the middle of the room, afraid to touch anything. This didn't feel real. Just hours ago, I'd been abandoned at a bus stop, and now I was in a mansion being treated like royalty. I used the bathroom, which had heated floors and a shower big enough for 3 people. I didn't change clothes yet because I still felt like an imposter. Instead, I washed my face, fixed my hair as best I could, and headed downstairs. I found Catherine in a cosy dining room that was smaller than the formal one I'd glimpsed earlier. She was already seated at the table, and Thomas was placing dishes of food in front of her. "Ah, there you are," Catherine said as I entered. "Please sit. You must be famished." The meal was simple but delicious. Roasted chicken, vegetables, fresh bread. I ate slowly at first, trying to remember my manners, but Catherine encouraged me to eat as much as I wanted. "Now then," Catherine said after we'd both had some food. "We need to talk about your situation seriously. I meant what I said earlier about your husband's behaviour being abusive. Have you thought about what you want to do?" I set down my fork. I don't know. Part of me thinks I should just go home and try to fix things. But another part... I trailed off. Another part knows you deserve better. Catherine finished. Olivia, may I tell you something about myself? Of course. 10 years ago, I lost my sight in a car accident. It wasn't anyone's fault, just bad luck and bad weather. Afterward, many people treated me differently. Business partners assumed I couldn't run my company anymore. Some friends stopped calling because they didn't know how to act around me. A few people even tried to take advantage of me, thinking I'd become helpless. She paused to take a sip of water. But I learned something important during that time. My worth had nothing to do with what others thought of me or what I could or couldn't do. My worth was inherent. It existed simply because I existed. And the same is true for you. Tears pricked my eyes again. Derek made me feel like everything was my fault, like I was the problem. That's what people like him do. They tear you down to build themselves up. But here's what I want you to understand. You have options. You don't have to go back to him. Not today, not tomorrow, not ever, unless you truly want to. But I have nowhere else to go. No money saved separately. Everything is in our joint account that Derek controls. Catherine smiled. That's where you're wrong. You have somewhere to go. You can stay here as long as you need. And as for money and legal matters, I have excellent lawyers who handle these situations all the time. I couldn't ask you to— You're not asking, I'm offering. Consider it my own small rebellion against men who think they can treat women as property to be controlled. She reached across the table and found my hand. I never had children of my own. No grandchildren. And I've always wondered what it would be like to help a young woman find her strength. Will you let me help you, Olivia? Not as charity, but as someone who sees potential in you that you've forgotten exists. I thought about Derek, about the years of feeling small and worthless, about sitting at that bus stop, abandoned and afraid. Then I thought about Catherine's words, about worth being inherent, about having options. Yes, I said, I want your help. But Catherine, what about Derek? When he realizes I'm not coming home, he'll panic, Catherine said with satisfaction. And that's exactly what we want. Let him worry. Let him wonder. And while he's doing that, we'll be preparing. Because in a few days, we're going to show your husband exactly what kind of woman he threw away. The next 5 days passed like a dream I was afraid to wake up from. Catherine kept her word about everything. The morning after I arrived, she had me meet with her personal lawyer, a sharp woman named Patricia who specialized in family law. Patricia listened to my story without judgment, taking notes on a yellow legal pad. When I finished, she looked at me with kind but serious eyes. Olivia, what your husband did constitutes abandonment and financial abuse. We can use this if you decide to file for divorce. But first, I need to ask, is that what you want? The word divorce felt heavy in my mouth. I'd grown up believing marriage was forever, that you worked through problems no matter what. But I also remembered sitting at that bus stop, terrified and alone, put there by the man who promised to love me. I think so, I said, but I'm scared. That's completely normal, Patricia said. Here's what I suggest. Take some time to think about it. Meanwhile, I'll start gathering documentation. Bank records, credit card statements, anything that shows the financial situation. Can you access your joint accounts online? I nodded. Derek had never hidden the passwords from me. He'd just made me afraid to look at them without his permission. Over the next few days, Patricia and her team worked quietly in the background. They discovered things that made my stomach turn. Derek had been withdrawing money from our savings account for months, money I'd contributed from my library paychecks, and I had no idea where it had gone. He'd also opened a credit card in just his name and run up thousands of dollars in charges at expensive restaurants and hotels. He's been taking someone else to these places, Patricia said gently, showing me the statements. The charges are always for 2 people, and they're on days when he told you he was working late. I felt numb looking at the evidence. Part of me had suspected, but seeing it in black and white made it real. Catherine also introduced me to her financial advisor and a therapist named Dr. Chen, who specialized in helping people recover from controlling relationships. Doctors say, Chen helped me understand that what I'd experienced wasn't normal marriage problems. It was a pattern of deliberate manipulation. But Catherine didn't just focus on the serious matters. She also made sure I had moments of joy. We had long conversations in her garden where she told me stories about building her business from nothing. She taught me that losing her sight had actually made her see people more clearly, because she had to rely on their words and actions rather than appearances. Your husband sounds confident and acts like he's in control, Catherine said one afternoon. But truly confident people don't need to tear others down. They lift people up. Margaret, the housekeeper, treated me like family. She made my favourite foods and left little notes of encouragement on my breakfast tray. Even Thomas, who was usually quiet and professional, started sharing stories about his own daughter who'd left a bad marriage years ago. It took courage, he told me one evening, but she's happy now, has a good job, nice apartment, and she's dating a man who treats her with respect. That's what you deserve too, Miss Olivia. I noticed he'd stopped calling me Alexandra. Somehow, in just a few days, I'd become part of their household for real. Meanwhile, Derek had been calling my mother's house repeatedly. My mother, confused and worried, had left messages on my phone, which Derek still had. Catherine's team managed to get me a new phone with a new number, and I finally called my mother back. Olivia, thank God Derek said you were missing. He filed a police report and everything. Where have you been? I took a deep breath. Mom, I'm safe. I'm staying with a friend. Derek didn't tell you the truth about what happened. I explained everything. My mother was silent for a long moment after I finished. Baby, I'm so sorry. I knew he could be difficult, but I didn't realize it was this bad. Why didn't you tell me? Because he made me feel like I was the problem, like I was overreacting or being too sensitive. You come stay with me, my mother said immediately. I don't care if I'm recovering from surgery. You're my daughter. Actually, Mom, I'm in a good place right now. I have help. Real help. But I need you to do something for me. If Derek calls again, tell him you heard from me and that I'm safe, but don't tell him where I am. Can you do that? She agreed, though I could hear the worry in her voice. On the 5th day, Catherine announced it was time for the next phase of her plan. There's a charity gala this Saturday night, she said over breakfast. It's for the Children's Hospital, and it's the biggest social event of the season. Everyone who's anyone will be there. That sounds nice, I said, not understanding why she was telling me this. Derek's car dealership is one of the sponsors, Catherine continued, which means Derek will definitely be there. Probably with his boss. That Brenda woman Patricia found out about. My heart started pounding. You want me to go? Catherine, I can't. I'm not ready to see him. I think you are, she said gently, but not as Derek's meek little wife who he can intimidate. You're going to attend as my granddaughter and heir. We're going to show him, and everyone else in that room, exactly what kind of woman he abandoned at a bus stop. I don't have anything to wear to something like that. I don't even know how to act at a fancy gala. Catherine smiled. Leave those details to me. Margaret has already arranged for a stylist to come tomorrow. And as for how to act, just be yourself. The real you, not the small version Derek tried to create. Trust me, dear. You're going to shine. That night, lying in the comfortable bed in the blue guest room, I thought about the gala. I was terrified, but I was also something else, something I hadn't felt in years. I was angry, and I was ready to stop hiding. Saturday evening arrived faster than I expected. The stylist Catherine hired spent 3 hours transforming me. My hair was swept up in an elegant style with soft curls framing my face. My makeup was perfect but natural, highlighting features I'd forgotten I had. And the dress, a deep emerald green gown that flowed like water, made me look like someone I barely recognized in the mirror. You look beautiful, dear, Catherine said when I came downstairs. She wore a stunning silver gown, and despite her blindness, she carried herself with absolute confidence. I'm terrified, I admitted. Good. That means you care. But remember, you're not going there to win Derek back. You're going to show him what he lost. There's a difference. Thomas drove us to the hotel where the gala was being held. As we pulled up to the entrance, I saw photographers and elegant people in expensive clothes walking up the red carpet. I can't do this, I whispered. Catherine took my arm firmly. Yes, you can. Thomas will guide us both. Keep your head high. You belong here just as much as anyone else. We stepped out of the car, and immediately flashbulbs started going off. People recognized Catherine Wilmington instantly. I heard whispers and murmurs as we walked into the grand ballroom. Is that really Catherine Wilmington? I thought she never came to these events anymore. Who's that with her? I've never seen her before. The ballroom was enormous, decorated with flowers and twinkling lights. An orchestra played soft music in the corner. Waiters circulated with champagne and appetizers. I felt completely out of my depth. Then I saw him. Derek was standing near the bar with a woman in a tight red dress, Brenda, his boss. He was laughing at something she said, looking completely relaxed and happy. Not like a man whose wife had been missing for almost a week. Not like someone who cared at all. Something cold settled in my chest. This was who he really was. And I'd spent 5 years making excuses for him. Derek's eyes swept across the room and landed on me. I watched his face change. Confusion, then shock, then something that looked like panic. His champagne glass actually slipped from his hand, shattering on the floor. He started pushing through the crowd toward us. Brenda followed, looking annoyed. Olivia! Derek's voice was too loud. People turned to look. Where the hell have you been? I've been worried sick. I filed a police report. Catherine stepped slightly in front of me, her voice calm but carrying across the room. Excuse me, young man, but that's quite a tone to take with my granddaughter. Derek blinked. Your granddaughter? What are you talking about? Olivia, what's going on? You must be the husband, Catherine said, and there was ice in her voice now. The one who abandoned dear Alexandra at a bus stop in the worst part of town with no money and no phone. Tell me, is that how you normally treat your wife? The people around us had stopped talking. Everyone was listening now. Derek's face went red. That's not... It was a misunderstanding. Olivia, tell her. Tell them all this is just a big misunderstanding. I found my voice. It came out stronger than I expected. The only misunderstanding was me thinking you were a good man. You left me there to teach me a lesson, Derek. Those were your exact words. You're being dramatic, Derek said, but his voice wavered. He looked around at all the watching faces. I was coming back for you. I just wanted you to think about your spending habits. My spending habits? I felt anger rising in my chest, hot and fierce. I bought groceries and a gift for my sick mother. Meanwhile, you've been spending thousands of dollars taking another woman to expensive restaurants and hotels. Brenda's face went pale. Other people gasped. Derek looked like he wanted the floor to swallow him. That's not... How did you... Derek stammered. Patricia, Catherine's lawyer, appeared beside us. She'd been at the gala already, waiting. She handed Derek a manila envelope. This contains documentation of financial misconduct, including withdrawals from joint accounts without your wife's knowledge, and evidence of infidelity. Mrs. Henderson has secured legal representation. Any further contact should go through her attorney. Derek stared at the envelope like it might bite him. Brenda stepped away from him, her expression disgusted. Derek, you told me you were separated, Brenda hissed. You said she left you. This is completely unacceptable. We'll discuss your employment status on Monday. She walked away, and several other people from Derek's dealership followed her, shaking their heads. Derek turned back to me, his expression desperate now. Olivia, please, we can work this out. I made mistakes, but we can fix this. Don't throw away 5 years of marriage. I looked at him, really looked at him. I saw the manipulation in his eyes, the calculation. He wasn't sorry for what he'd done. He was sorry he'd been caught. sorry he was being humiliated in front of important people. You threw away our marriage when you left me at that bus stop, I said quietly. You threw it away every time you made me feel worthless, every time you controlled our money, every time you chose her over me. I'm done, Derek. You'll be hearing from my lawyer about the divorce. You can't afford a divorce. You have nothing without me. Catherine laughed, a sound that was both elegant and cutting. Young man, I have 17 lawyers on retainer. Olivia will have the best representation money can buy. Now, I suggest you leave before security escorts you out. Derek looked around at all the disapproving faces, at the people who'd witnessed his humiliation. Then he turned and practically ran from the ballroom. The orchestra started playing again. Conversations resumed, but several people came up to introduce themselves to me, to shake Catherine's hand, to tell me how brave I was. Later that night, back at the mansion, I sat with Catherine in her study. "How do you feel?" she asked. "Lighter," I said, surprised by my own answer, like I've been carrying something heavy for years and finally put it down. "That's exactly right. Now, we have practical matters to discuss. Patricia will handle the divorce proceedings. But what about after? Have you thought about what you want to do with your life?" I had been thinking about it. I love books. I love helping people discover stories. At the library, I always enjoyed working with the literacy programs, helping adults learn to read. Catherine smiled. "Interesting you should mention that. The Wilmington Foundation has been looking for someone to manage our literacy and education programs. Someone who genuinely cares about the mission, not just the salary. The position comes with a generous salary, benefits, and the chance to make real changes in people's lives. Would you be interested?" I stared at her. "Catherine, you've already done so much. I'm not doing this out of charity, Olivia. I'm doing this because you're qualified, passionate, and I trust you. Also, selfishly, I've grown rather fond of having you around. This big house gets lonely." Tears filled my eyes, but this time they were happy tears. "I'd love to. Thank you for everything. You saved my life that day at the bus stop." Catherine reached over and squeezed my hand. "No, dear. You saved yourself. I just gave you a safe place to land while you remembered who you really were. The strength was always yours." 3 months later, I stood in my new office at the Wilmington Foundation. The divorce was finalized. I'd gotten half of everything Derek had tried to hide, plus a settlement for his misconduct. But more than that, I'd gotten myself back. My mother called to tell me she'd never been prouder. My few remaining friends reached out, apologizing for not seeing what was happening. Some of Catherine's business associates had become my friends too. Best of all, Catherine and I had grown genuinely close. She'd become the grandmother I'd always wished for, strong, wise, and unconditionally supportive. That afternoon, I was reviewing grant applications when Catherine appeared in my doorway. "How's your first week going?" she asked. "It's wonderful. I approved funding for 3 new literacy centers today." "Excellent. Now, I have a question. How would you feel about making our arrangement official? I'd like to update my will to include you, not as a false granddaughter for show, but as real family." I crossed the room and hugged her tight. "I'd be honored. You're already family to me." As I drove home that evening to my own apartment that I'd rented with my new salary, I passed a bus stop. A woman sat there alone, looking tired and sad. I pulled over. "Excuse me," I said through the window. "Do you need help getting somewhere?" The woman looked up, surprised. "I'm just waiting for the bus." "I'm heading downtown. I'd be happy to give you a ride if you'd like." She hesitated, then smiled gratefully and got in. As we drove, she told me she'd just left her boyfriend who'd been treating her badly. She was scared but determined to start over. I gave her my card for the Wilmington Foundation. We have programs that help women in transition. Job training, financial literacy, legal resources. Call this number on Monday. We'll help you. She looked at the card with tears in her eyes. "Why are you being so kind to a stranger?" I thought about that terrible Tuesday afternoon, about Catherine's words, about finding strength I didn't know I had. Because someone was kind to me once when I needed it most, I said. And it changed everything.